Kai Sharma stood on the virtual precipice of his digital empire. At 34, his life in Seattle, Washington, was a meticulously coded masterpiece of ambition realized. His indie game studio, Pixel Bloom, co-founded with his longtime friend and creative director Liam Thorne, was a beacon in the competitive gaming industry. Their latest title, Chrono Bloom, a time-bending puzzle adventure, was poised to be their breakout hit, a game that would not only redefine the genre but also cement Kai's legacy as a visionary lead developer. Chrono Bloom wasn't just another project. It was a passion project, born from countless late nights, discarded lines of code, and the relentless pursuit of blending intricate mechanics with a deeply emotional narrative. Kai had poured his soul into every algorithm, from the seamless time-looping mechanics to the adaptive AI that learned from player choices. It was a symphony of his deepest convictions. Games could be art, connect players on a profound level, and inspire new ways of thinking. The initial concept, a sprawling narrative driven by player decisions within a complex temporal framework, had been his entirely. Liam, with his sharp artistic vision and charismatic presentation style, was the perfect complement, translating his technical brilliance into compelling pitches that won over publishers and the gaming community alike. Today was the day of the final presentation to a major publishing house, Nexus Games. The culmination of 3 years of relentless work, it represented the largest, most prestigious publishing deal Pixel Bloom had ever pursued. Kai, usually a whirlwind of nervous energy before such high-stakes meetings, felt an unusual calm. He had reviewed the comprehensive game design document, the detailed financial projections, and the meticulously crafted marketing strategy a dozen times. Every contingency was accounted for. Every potential bug had a workaround. This was it. He adjusted the frames of his sleek, minimalist glasses, a subtle nod to the focused intellect he carried. His dark, straight hair was pulled back in a practical bun, revealing the sharp lines of his jaw, a testament to his unwavering determination. As he walked through the vibrant, open-plan office of their studio in South Lake Union, the hum of activity around him felt like a well-oiled machine, each cog working in perfect synchronicity. Junior developers hunched over their keyboards, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens. Animators buzzed between workstations, their voices a low murmur of collaboration. This was his world, a world he had built line by line, pixel by pixel. Liam met him at the entrance to the main conference room, a wide, confident smile on his face. He was dressed impeccably, as always, his sandy hair perfectly styled. "Ready for the grand finale, Kai?" he asked, his voice smooth and reassuring. He clapped him on the shoulder, a familiar gesture of camaraderie that had always felt solid, dependable. "As I'll ever be," Kai replied, a genuine smile touching his lips. "You've got the revised monetization strategy, right? Just the minor tweaks we made last night?" "Of course," Liam said, patting his sleek tablet. "All buttoned up. Don't worry, Kai. This is a slam dunk. They practically signed off on it last week." His confidence was infectious, and Kai felt a surge of excitement. They had worked tirelessly for this. The Chrono Bloom project wasn't just a career milestone. It was a personal triumph, a symbol of their shared vision and enduring partnership. Liam and he had been friends since their university days, kindred spirits who bonded over late-night coding sessions and shared dreams of revolutionizing interactive entertainment. Their professional relationship had grown organically from that foundation of trust and mutual respect. He was the artistic visionary to his technical genius, the charismatic storyteller to his meticulous coder. They were an unstoppable team. The publisher meeting was held in Nexus Games' opulent boardroom, a space that felt both futuristic and slightly intimidating. The air was thick with anticipation as Kai and Liam took their places at the large glass table, facing the distinguished executives. Miss Chen, the stern but fair-minded head of acquisitions, offered a polite nod. Liam began the presentation, his voice resonating with his usual persuasive charm. He walked the executives through the initial game concept, the stunning cinematic trailers, the player engagement metrics, and the community-building plans. Kai watched him, a quiet sense of pride swelling within him. He was a master orator, capable of weaving a narrative that captivated his audience. As he spoke, he gestured to the breathtaking gameplay footage projected onto the large screen, images that brought Kai's code to life, with vivid clarity. The sprawling open world, the intricate puzzles, the emotional character arcs. It was all there, vivid and compelling. Then, it was Kai's turn to delve into the technical specifics. The innovative game engine architecture, the cutting-edge AI routines, the intricate network code for multiplayer features. He spoke with a quiet authority, his passion for the project evident in every carefully chosen word. He answered their questions with precision, anticipating their concerns and offering thoughtful solutions. The executives listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to genuine interest, and finally, to admiration. As he concluded his segment, he glanced at Liam, expecting his usual approving nod, the silent signal that they were in sync, but Liam wasn't looking at him. His gaze was fixed on Miss Chen, a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. A flicker of unease, cold and unwelcome, brushed against Kai. He dismissed it as pre-presentation jitters, a lingering anxiety from the immense pressure of the moment. The Q&A session went smoothly. The executives seemed genuinely impressed, their questions turning from critical inquiries to enthusiastic explorations of the game's potential. Miss Chen leaned forward, a rare smile gracing her features. "Mr. Sharma, Mr. Thorne," he began, his voice carrying a note of finality. "Nexus Games is thoroughly impressed. This title, it's truly groundbreaking. We've reviewed many pitches over the past few months, but yours stands head and shoulders above the rest." Kai's heart soared. This was it, the culmination of years of hard work, of dreams, of unwavering dedication. "However," Miss Chen continued, and the single word hung in the air, chilling Kai to the bone. The sudden shift in her tone was palpable, a discordant note in the symphony of their success. Kai's eyes darted to Liam, whose expression remained oddly neutral, almost expectant. "We have received an updated proposal," Miss Chen stated, her gaze now fixed on Liam. "One that, while retaining the core innovative concepts, offers a more streamlined approach to the game's development cycle and, more importantly, a significantly reduced budget without compromising the integrity of the design." Kai's breath hitched. An updated proposal? Without his knowledge? A cold dread began to coil in his stomach. He looked at Liam, his eyes silently pleading for an explanation, for him to clarify this sudden, unsettling turn of events. But Liam avoided his gaze, his attention solely on Miss Chen. "Mr. Thorne," Miss Chen continued, "your revised submission, presented to us just yesterday, addresses several of our lingering concerns regarding scalability and long-term monetization. We understand this was a last-minute adjustment, but Nexus Games finds it incredibly compelling." Kai felt the blood drain from his face. His revised submission? Last night? He hadn't made any revisions. They had finalized everything hours before. A sharp, icy realization began to form in his mind. A monstrous, unthinkable truth. Liam finally turned to him, his smile now a thin, almost apologetic line. "Kai, I apologize for the surprise. I felt it was crucial to present the most competitive offer possible. Nexus had some reservations, and I worked through the night to address them." His voice was calm, almost too calm, laced with a practiced sincerity that suddenly felt like a venomous lie. "What are you talking about, Liam?" Kai's voice was barely a whisper, laced with a growing horror. "We finalized the proposal. There were no further revisions." Miss Chen interjected, her voice firm. "Mr. Sharma, Mr. Thorne presented a comprehensive, fully updated proposal yesterday evening. It outlines a revised game engine architecture, a rephased development timeline, and a significantly optimized financial model. All under the Pixel Bloom banner, of course." She paused, then added, "We were particularly impressed with the ingenuity of the AI re-architecture, Mr. Thorne. Truly remarkable." The words hit Kai like a physical blow. AI re-architecture? Those were his most recent, cutting-edge innovations. Algorithms he had only shared with Liam in their private discussions, concepts he had been refining for months, still unintegrated into the official proposal. He had taken his intellectual property, his very essence, and presented it as his own. The room began to spin. The faces of the executives blurred into an indistinguishable mass. His vision, his dream, his legacy, stolen. Not by a competitor, but by the man who had stood by his side for 10 years. The man he had trusted implicitly. The man who was supposed to be his partner. "Liam," Kai managed, his voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and burgeoning rage. "What have you done?" Liam finally met his gaze, and in his eyes, Kai saw not remorse, but a cold, calculated ambition he had never truly perceived. "Kai," he said, his voice dropping to a low, almost conspiratorial tone, "this is business. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions for the greater good of the studio. You were too. Attached to the original code. I merely optimized it." "Optimized it?" He had gutted his soul and presented it as his own. The betrayal was a searing brand on his heart, an agony far deeper than any professional setback. It wasn't just the game. It was the shattering of a friendship, the obliteration of trust, the violent dismantling of his entire professional identity. Miss Chen cleared her throat, seemingly oblivious to the silent, devastating war unfolding between the two partners. "Well then, Mr. Sharma." "Mr. Thorne," she announced, a triumphant smile now firmly in place. "It is with great pleasure that Nexus Games officially offers the publishing deal for Chronobloom to Pixel Bloom. We look forward to a successful collaboration." Kai heard the words, but they sounded distant, muffled, as if he were underwater. The congratulations, the polite applause, the satisfied murmurs of the executives, it all faded into a deafening roar in his ears. He felt a cold, hollow ache spread through his chest, a void where his trust, his dreams, and his future had once resided. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the polished floor, drawing startled glances from the executives. He didn't care. His eyes were fixed on Liam, who now looked slightly uncomfortable, a faint flush rising on his cheeks. "You absolute parasite," Kai whispered, his voice raw with emotion, though it was barely audible above the polite chatter. He didn't wait for a response. He couldn't. The air in the room felt suffocating, poisoned by his deceit. He turned and walked out, his steps stiff and deliberate, leaving behind the shattered remnants of his career, his partnership, and his trust. As he stepped out of the sleek, modern office building and onto the bustling streets of downtown Seattle, the vibrant city he loved felt alien, hostile. The crisp autumn air, usually invigorating, now felt like a cruel mockery. He walked aimlessly, the sounds of traffic, distant ferries, and chattering pedestrians blending into a cacophony that mirrored the chaos in his mind. His phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket, probably Liam, trying to smooth things over, or a concerned colleague. He ignored it all. The betrayal was a physical weight pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Liam, his friend, his partner, the man he had shared countless dreams with, celebrated victories with, and confided in during moments of doubt. He had not only stolen his work, but had done so with a chilling, calculated precision right under his nose, in the very space they had built together. How could he have been so blind? How could he have missed the signs? Had he always been this ruthless, hiding it beneath a veneer of charm and camaraderie? His mind replayed the entire presentation, searching for clues, for any hint of his deception. The subtle smirk, the averted gaze, the overly confident tone, they all clicked into place, forming a grotesque mosaic of his treachery. Chronobloom, his masterpiece, was now tainted, a monument to his betrayal. Kai found himself standing by the Puget Sound, the gray-green water lapping steadily against the shore. The iconic view of the Olympic Mountains, usually a comforting sight, now felt like a symbol of division, a chasm between his past and a terrifying, uncertain future. The city lights began to twinkle as dusk settled, but their warmth did nothing to dispel the cold emptiness that had taken root in his soul. Everything he had worked for, everything he had believed in, had been reduced to ashes in a single, devastating moment. He was adrift, anchorless, in a world that suddenly felt entirely foreign. The code of his life, once so perfectly rendered, had been violently corrupted. The crisp Seattle autumn air offered no solace to Kai Sharma. He walked aimlessly, the vibrant energy of downtown, usually a source of inspiration and endless possibility, now felt like a cruel, mocking symphony. The distant hum of ferries on the Sound, the chatter of tourists at Pike Place Market, the easy laughter spilling from coffee shops, it all grated on his raw nerves. He was numb, lost somewhere between disbelief and an overwhelming urge to scream. The betrayal was a physical weight, pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Liam, his best friend, his partner, the man he had trusted with everything, who had just systematically dismantled his life's work in front of his eyes. How could this have happened? How could Liam, the man he had built Pixel Bloom with, the man who had shared his dreams, his struggles, his triumphs, betray him with such cold, calculated precision? Kai's hands clenched into fists, his body rigid with a potent mix of anger, confusion, and a profound sense of loss. The city around him, usually a familiar embrace, now felt vast and indifferent, its iconic skyline cold and distant. He couldn't go back to the studio. Not tonight. He couldn't face the reality of it all. Couldn't look at the space that once felt like a second home, a sanctuary where he poured his soul into code, now tainted by Liam's deceit. He wasn't ready to confront Liam again, to deal with the thousand questions that raced through his mind. So, he just walked. Each step was heavy, a testament to the emotional burden he carried. He didn't know where he was going, didn't care. The streets were busy, full of people who seemed to have their lives in order, who weren't stuck in this moment of personal devastation. And then, his mind immediately went to Liam. The memories flooded back, the countless nights they spent together in their cramped university dorm, meticulously planning Pixel Bloom, their shared excitement over their first successful game jam, how they'd supported each other through every challenge, every bug fix. Liam, the man who had been his closest confidant, the one he had trusted with his vision, his passion, his very future. Now, he felt like a stranger, a venomous snake. How had he not seen the signs? How had he missed the obvious? Had he always been this ruthless, hiding it beneath a veneer of charm and camaraderie? Kai's thoughts spiraled out of control, a vortex of pain and disbelief. Before he knew it, he found himself standing outside a dimly lit, unassuming arcade bar in Capitol Hill, its retro neon sign flickering erratically. He had no intention of going in, no real desire to drink or socialize, but something about the place felt like a refuge, a dark corner where he could disappear. Inside, the cacophony of arcade machine sounds and indie rock music blended into a dull background hum as Kai sat down at the bar, ordering a strong IPA he barely tasted. As he sipped the bitter liquid, he couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Every time he closed his eyes, all he could see was Liam's face, his practiced sincerity, the cold ambition in his eyes, and then the image of Miss Chen, the executive, nodding in approval. How could this happen? He stared into his glass, lost in thought, when a voice broke through the fog of his mind. Kai, is that really you? Kai turned, surprised to see his old university mentor, Professor Anya Sharma, standing at the end of the bar, looking both concerned and relieved. Professor Sharma, a brilliant and notoriously tough computer science professor who had always pushed him to his limits, felt like a lifeline in the middle of this storm. She had retired from teaching a few years ago, but they still kept in touch, occasionally meeting for coffee. He hadn't expected to see her here, now. Professor Sharma, Kai muttered, his voice hoarse. What are you doing here? Please, Kai, it's Anya now, you know that, she said, sliding into the seat next to him, her gaze sharp but kind. I should ask you the same thing. I've been trying to reach you. Your phone went straight to voicemail. I heard about Pixel Bloom and Liam. Her voice softened, laced with a quiet understanding. Kai took another sip of his drink, trying to compose himself. I don't know where to start, Anya. Anya sighed, her hand gently covering his on the bar. I'm so sorry, Kai. I know how much that studio, that game, meant to you. And Liam, I always had my reservations about his artistic integrity, but I never thought he'd go this far. Kai couldn't bring himself to look at Anya. His thoughts were still tangled in the mess of what had happened, and no matter how hard he tried, it all came crashing down again. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that Liam, of all people, had been the one to destroy his life's work. He stole it, Anya, Kai said finally, his voice barely a whisper, the words tasting like ash. My code, my AI architecture. He presented it as his own, with a revised plan that cut corners on everything I believed in. He admitted it, said I was too attached to the original code. He called it business. Anya's face hardened, her academic rigor kicking in. That's not business, Kai. That's intellectual theft and betrayal of the highest order. She squeezed his hand. You're in shock. You don't have to figure everything out right now. I don't know how to even begin to fix this, Kai replied, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. I feel like everything I've built has just crumbled. Pixel Bloom was my life, my identity. I can't go back. I can't face him. What the hell do I do now? Anya reached out, placing her other hand on his arm. You take it one step at a time, Kai. You don't have to have all the answers right now. This is a huge betrayal, and I'm not going to let it's going to take time. But you've got me. You've got your family. And we'll be here for you, no matter what. Kai nodded, the tears threatening to fall, but he couldn't bring himself to cry. Not here, not in front of Anya, he thought. The idea of crying felt so foreign now. He had spent so much of his life suppressing his emotions, thinking that tireless coding and achieving his gaming dream were the answers to everything. But now, all those achievements felt hollow. Nothing mattered. The only thing that felt real was the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, the hollow emptiness that weighed down on him every moment. I don't know what to do about Liam, Kai said, his voice shaking. He's been my best friend for years. He was there when I first conceptualized Chronobloom. He was there for every late night, every challenge. How could he do this to me? How could I not see it? Anya shook her head slowly, her expression pained. I don't know, Kai. I wish I could explain it. But what matters now is what you do next. You can't control what happened, but you can control how you move forward. You need to get some space from this. Kai took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. He was angry, but more than that, he was deeply, profoundly hurt. He wasn't sure what the future held. His life, once full of certainty, now felt like a house of cards ready to fall at any moment. The thought of confronting Liam again filled him with dread. He couldn't face him yet, not when the betrayal was so raw. But Anya was right. Couldn't stay in this place forever, drowning in his grief and anger. I need to get out of here, Kai muttered, looking up at Anya, his eyes still clouded with pain. I can't stay in Seattle. Not right now. It's all too much. Anya nodded. I have a small cabin up in the San Juan Islands, near Friday Harbor. It's remote, quiet. No internet, barely any cell signal. You can crash there for a while. Get away from all this. We'll figure it out. You don't need to be alone in all of this. Kai considered Anya's offer, feeling a flicker of relief at the thought of a change of scenery, away from the city where everything had fallen apart. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new. Or maybe it would just give him the time and space he needed to process everything. Either way, he couldn't stay in his old life. Not yet. Thanks, Anya, Kai said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. I appreciate it. I don't know what I would do without you right now. Anya smiled softly, her expression gentle. You've got me, Kai. And you'll get through this. It'll be hard, but you'll get through it, one day at a time. The ferry ride to Friday Harbor felt like a journey into another dimension. The bustling city skyline slowly receded, replaced by the serene expanse of the Puget Sound, dotted with evergreen islands. The air grew cleaner, cooler, carrying the scent of salt and pine. Kai watched the landscape change, each mile putting more distance between him and the shattered remnants of his life. He felt a faint, almost imperceptible easing of the suffocating pressure in his chest. Anya's cabin was exactly as she described, rustic, secluded, and utterly peaceful. Tucked away, amidst a grove of towering fir trees, it was a small wooden structure with a wide, welcoming porch overlooking a quiet inlet. Inside, it was simple but cozy, with a stone fireplace, a worn armchair, and a small, functional kitchen. There was no Wi-Fi, and his phone signal was spotty at best. A blessing in disguise, Kai realized. He needed to disconnect. He spent the first few days in a haze, the quiet solitude amplifying the echoes of his pain. He would wake with a start, the betrayal fresh in his mind, and spend hours staring out at the water, the silence broken only by the cry of gulls or the gentle lapping of waves. He tried to read, but the words blurred. He tried to tinker with some old circuit boards he'd brought, but the joy had vanished from his hands. The phone calls from his parents, full of sympathy and concern, felt distant, almost unreal. Only Anya's occasional texts, short and to the point, felt grounding. On the fifth morning, Anya called. Kai, you can't stay cooped up there forever, she said, her voice gentle but firm. It's time to get some fresh air. You need to do something. Anything. Even if it's just a walk on the beach. Kai had barely left the cabin since the day Liam told him everything. Every time he thought about leaving, the weight of it all would sink in again: the betrayal, the lies, the shattered future. But Anya was right. He couldn't hide from it forever. And as much as he wanted to stay cocooned in his grief, the world was still turning. He couldn't stop it. Okay, Anya, he said, his voice raspy. I'll go for a walk. He hung up and slowly pulled on a light jacket. Stepping out onto the porch, he took a deep, shaky breath. The air was cool and clean, carrying the earthy scent of pine and sea. He started walking, following a narrow dirt path that wound through the trees towards the shore. The sounds of nature slowly began to penetrate the fog in his mind. The chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of the waves. He walked for what felt like hours, his legs aching, his mind slowly clearing. He found himself by a small, rocky cove, its water clear and calm. He sat down on a smooth, sun-warmed rock, watching the waves ebb and flow, mesmerized by their steady, relentless movement. They kept going, no matter what. They didn't stop for anything. For the first time in days, Kai allowed himself to simply be. The cool air, the sound of the water, the gentle rustle of the trees. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He didn't have all the answers yet. He wasn't fixed. But for a few minutes he could just exist, unburdened by the weight of his shattered past. As he stood up to leave, he felt a small flicker of hope faint. But there, he had taken the first step, and that, for now, was enough. The quiet solitude of Anya's cabin on the San Juan Islands, initially a suffocating blanket, slowly began to transform into a gentle cocoon. Kai had spent the first few days in a haze, the vast, silent expanse of the Puget Sound outside amplifying the echoes of his pain. He would wake with a start, the betrayal by Liam fresh in his mind, and spend hours staring out at the water, the silence broken only by the mournful cry of gulls or the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. He tried to read, but the words blurred. He tried to tinker with some old circuit boards he'd brought, remnants of past projects, but the joy had vanished from his hands, replaced by a leaden apathy. The phone calls from his parents, full of sympathy and concern, felt distant, almost unreal. Only Anya's occasional texts, short and to the point, felt grounding, a tether to a world he felt increasingly disconnected from. He knew he couldn't stay in this state of suspended animation forever. The emotional weight of everything that had happened was crushing, but a faint, persistent whisper in the back of his mind urged him forward. He had to find a way to cope, to rebuild, to reclaim some semblance of himself. The cabin, though remote, was a sanctuary, a place where the constant hum of Seattle's tech world and the bitter memory of Pixel Bloom felt miles away. On the fifth morning, Anya called, her voice gentle but firm. "Kai, you can't stay cooped up there forever," she said. "It's time to get some fresh air. You need to do something, anything. Even if it's just a walk on the beach, or... Remember that old radio kit you always wanted to build? I think I saw it in the storage shed when I was cleaning out some things last year." Kai had barely left the cabin since the day Liam told him everything. Every time he thought about leaving, the weight of it all would sink in again: the betrayal, the lies, the shattered future. But Anya was right. He couldn't hide from it forever. And as much as he wanted to stay cocooned in his grief, the world was still turning. He couldn't stop it. He reluctantly agreed, and after a quick, uninspired breakfast, he ventured out to the small, dusty shed behind the cabin. True to Anya's word, tucked away in a forgotten corner, was a box labeled Vintage Radio Kit, 1950s. It was a gift from his grandfather years ago, a project he'd always intended to get to, but had always pushed aside for the more pressing demands of game development. He pulled it out, blowing off layers of dust, and carried it back into the cabin. He set the box on the small, worn wooden table in the living room. The components were laid out: a tangle of wires, resistors, capacitors, a vacuum tube, and a faded, intricate diagram. His hands, accustomed to the swift, clean movements of typing code, felt clumsy as he tried to decipher the schematic. The instructions were sparse, written in an archaic technical language that felt light years away from the sleek, intuitive interfaces he was used to. The initial few hours were a frustrating mess. Wires tangled, connections failed, and the tiny components seemed to mock his once sharp precision. The lump of metal and plastic refused to cooperate, collapsing into a shapeless mess with every clumsy attempt to connect it. His fingers, usually nimble on a keyboard, felt thick and uncoordinated. He was stiff, unsure of his movements, but there was something freeing about it. For the first time in weeks, Kai allowed himself to focus on something that wasn't heartbreak. With each failed connection, each snapped wire, he released a tiny bit of the anger that had built up over the past few months. His betrayal, his heartbreak, the endless loops of thoughts about Liam, all of it started to get quieter. Each carefully placed component, each twist of a wire, felt like a step away from the emotional paralysis that had held him captive. He lost track of time. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. And still, Kai hunched over the table, a small desk lamp casting a focused beam on his work. He wasn't making a game, wasn't optimizing an AI, wasn't building a multi-million-dollar empire. He was simply building. And in that simplicity, he found a strange, unexpected solace. The next morning, he woke with a faint ache in his neck and shoulders, but his mind felt surprisingly clear. He immediately returned to the radio kit. He found himself thinking differently, approaching the problem not with the abstract logic of code, but with the tactile, physical reality of circuits and connections. He started over, meticulously laying out each component, tracing the path of the current with his finger before making a connection. He worked for hours, the silence of the cabin punctuated only by the faint click of tools and the occasional sigh of concentration. He discovered a rhythm to it that felt familiar, echoing the meditative focus he once found in the flow state of coding. His hands, once clumsy, began to respond, becoming more precise, more confident. The frustration was still there, a persistent hum beneath the surface, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was a challenge, a puzzle to be solved, not a personal failing. The sting in his fingers from a slipped wire didn't matter anymore. The ache in his back was nothing compared to the emotional weight he'd been carrying. He had to keep moving forward. This, he thought, was a small way to start. By the time the sun began to set again, a rudimentary radio chassis stood on the table. It wasn't perfect. Wires still jutted out at odd angles, and the soldering wasn't exactly professional, but it was his. He connected a small antenna he found in the shed, plugged in the power, and held his breath. He turned the dial, a faint crackle filling the air. He adjusted it again, slowly, meticulously. And then a faint, garbled voice emerged, followed by the tinny strains of an old country song. It was barely audible, fading in and out, but it was there. A connection, a signal. A small, genuine smile touched Kai's lips. He had done it. He had created something. Something tangible, something that worked, something that brought sound from the silent air. It wasn't that his problems had disappeared, but for the first time in a while, he felt like he had control. Even if it was only for a moment, the weight on his shoulders had lifted, just a little. That evening, Anya called. "How was your day, Kai?" she asked, her voice light. I built a radio," Kai admitted, a faint smile on his face. "It's old, and it barely works, but it works." Anya chuckled. "See? I told you. You have to find those things again, Kai. You can't spend all your time looking back at what you lost. There's still a lot in front of you. What's next?" Kai looked at the radio, then out at the dark expanse of the sound. "I don't know," he said. But this time, the words weren't laced with despair. "But I think I want to build something else. Something new." He felt a small flicker of hope faint. But there. He had taken the first step, and that for now was enough. He was beginning to see that the world was still full of signals, even when his own had been jammed. The weeks that followed, Kai's small triumph with the vintage radio felt like a slow, deliberate recalibration of his internal compass. The initial high of hearing that faint country song through the static had faded, but it left behind something more enduring. A quiet curiosity, a nascent desire to understand how things truly worked, beyond the abstract layers of code. He had spent years building virtual worlds, intricate digital ecosystems, but the tangible reality of circuits and signals offered a different kind of satisfaction. It was raw, immediate, and undeniably real. He continued to tinker with the radio, refining connections, experimenting with different antennas he fashioned from spare wire he found in the shed. He wasn't aiming for perfection, just understanding. He ordered a few basic electronics books online, old dog-eared tomes that smelled of dust and forgotten knowledge. He devoured them, his mind, once accustomed to the rapid-fire logic of programming, now slowing down, absorbing the fundamental principles of electricity, magnetism, and wave propagation. The frustration was still a constant companion: blown fuses, short circuits, components that stubbornly refused to behave, but it no longer felt like a personal attack. It was part of the process, a bug to be debugged, a problem to be solved. The cabin, once a symbol of his isolation, became his laboratory. The worn wooden table, previously a place for uninspired meals, was now covered in wires, soldering irons, and the faint scent of burnt flux. He started small, building simple circuits, blinking LEDs, rudimentary amplifiers, even a small, solar-powered fan that whirred to life with a satisfying hum. Each successful project, no matter how minor, was a small victory against the overwhelming sense of helplessness that had once consumed him. It was a tangible proof that he could still create, still build, still make something work. His physical routine also settled into a rhythm. The walks along the rugged coastline became longer, more purposeful. He started noticing the intricate details of the island's ecosystem, the way the tide carved patterns in the sand, the resilient growth of the fir trees clinging to the cliffs, the silent, enduring strength of the natural world. He'd often find himself sitting by the water, sketching circuit diagrams in a small notebook, the rhythmic lapping of the waves a soothing backdrop to his thoughts. The constant hum of Seattle's tech world and the bitter memory of pixel bloom felt not just miles away, but light years distant. Anya's calls became less about checking in on his emotional state and more about genuine curiosity regarding his new projects. She'd listened patiently as he excitedly described the intricacies of a transistor or the challenges of building a stable power supply. She even sent him a few old decommissioned server components from her university lab, a treasure trove of wires, chips, and connectors that kept him busy for days. Her quiet support, devoid of judgment or expectations, was a lifeline. One particularly stormy afternoon, with the rain drumming against the cabin roof, Kai was attempting to build a small, low-power transmitter. He had been struggling with a persistent hum in the audio signal, a frustrating interference that defied all his attempts to eliminate it. He was hunched over the workbench, his brow furrowed in concentration, when a knock echoed through the cabin. He straightened up, surprised. Visitors were rare, especially in this weather. He opened the door to find a woman standing on his porch, drenched but smiling. She was in her early 30s, with vibrant red hair pulled back in a messy braid and a pair of bright, inquisitive eyes. She held a large, mud-splattered backpack and a small, antique-looking camera. "Hi, sorry to bother you," she said, her voice clear and friendly over the sound of the rain. "My name's Maya. My car broke down about a mile back on the main road. Saw your light on. Any chance you have a phone I could use? Mine's completely dead." Kai hesitated for a moment, his hermit-like routine momentarily disrupted. Then, remembering Anya's insistence on connection, he stepped aside. "Come in, you're soaked. My phone signal is pretty spotty here, but you're welcome to try. I'm Kai." Maya stepped inside, shaking water from her hair. "Thanks, Kai. It's a lifesaver. I was out hiking trying to get some shots of the storm, and then my old clunker decided to give up the ghost." She gestured to her camera. "I'm a freelance photographer, mostly nature and landscape." As Maya tried his phone, getting only a faint, flickering signal, her eyes landed on his workbench. Her eyebrows rose in surprise. "Wow, what is all this? Are you building a robot?" she asked, a playful glint in her eyes. Kai chuckled, a genuine, unforced sound that surprised even himself. "Not quite. Just an old radio kit. And now, trying to build a small transmitter. It's a new hobby." Maya walked closer, her curiosity piqued. "That's amazing. My dad used to be an amateur radio enthusiast. He had a whole setup in our garage. I always found it so cool, the idea of sending signals through the air." She picked up a small circuit board, examining it with genuine interest. "You know, there's a small community of radio enthusiasts on the island. They have a weekly meetup at the old community hall in Friday Harbor. They might be able to help with that hum." The suggestion hit Kai with unexpected force. A community. Other people who understood this strange new world he was exploring. He had been so focused on solitary creation, on rebuilding himself in isolation, that the idea of connecting with others felt both daunting and incredibly appealing. I hadn't thought about that," Kai admitted, feeling a faint blush creep up his neck. The thought of stepping back into a social setting, even a small one, after Liam's betrayal, was terrifying. But the idea of solving this persistent hum, of learning from others, was a stronger pull. Maya smiled. "It's a friendly bunch, and they love new blood, especially someone who's actually building things, not just collecting old gear." She finally got a faint signal on his phone and quickly dialed a tow truck. "Looks like I'll be here a while. Mind if I wait it out?" "Not at all," Kai said, a new sense of anticipation stirring within him. He found himself explaining the hum, the circuit, the challenges he was facing. Maya listened intently, offering thoughtful questions and sharing anecdotes about her dad's radio adventures. For the first time, in a long time, Kai felt truly engaged in a conversation that wasn't about his past or his pain, but about shared interest and genuine curiosity. By the time the tow truck arrived, hours later, the storm had begun to subside. Maya thanked him profusely, her eyes sparkling. "It was really great meeting you, Kai. You should definitely check out that radio club. Tell them Maya sent you." She scribbled down an address and a time on a napkin. "And maybe, if you're ever looking for someone to photograph your creations, or just want to explore the island, let me know." She offered a warm, genuine smile. Kai found himself smiling back, a feeling of lightness he hadn't felt in months. "I'll think about it, Maya. Thanks." As he watched her disappear into the fading light, Kai looked down at the napkin in his hand. The address for the radio club. A small, seemingly insignificant piece of paper, but it felt like a new signal, a clear frequency cutting through the static of his isolation. He didn't have all the answers yet. He wasn't fixed. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a genuine pull towards something beyond the cabin walls. The world, he was beginning to realize, was still full of connections, waiting to be found. The napkin with Maya's hurried scribble felt like a compass pointing to an unknown destination. Radio Club, Friday Harbor Community Hall, Thursdays, 7 p.m. Kai stared at it for days, the simple words holding a weight disproportionate to their ink. The idea of joining a community, of intentionally stepping back into a social sphere after the isolating trauma of Liam's betrayal, was terrifying. His instinct was to retreat, to continue his solitary pursuit of circuits and signals within the safe confines of the cabin. Yet, the persistent hum in his transmitter, the very problem Maya had suggested the club could help with, gnawed at him. More than that, a nascent curiosity, a flicker of something akin to excitement, began to stir. He was building, yes, but he was building alone. What if there was more to learn, more to experience, beyond the walls of his self-imposed sanctuary? The Thursday arrived, cloaked in a typical island mist. Kai found himself dressed in a clean but still slightly wrinkled shirt, feeling a nervous flutter in his stomach that reminded him of his first big game launch. He drove the short distance to Friday Harbor, the familiar winding roads feeling less like an escape route and more like a path forward. The old community hall was a quaint, unassuming building, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. He took a deep breath, pushed open the heavy wooden door, and stepped inside. The room was a cacophony of crackling radios, the murmur of voices, and the distinct scent of solder and old electronics. A dozen or so people, ranging from grizzled veterans with calloused hands to eager young enthusiasts, were huddled around tables laden with wires, circuit boards, and vintage radio equipment. A few looked up as he entered, offering polite, curious nods. He spotted Maya almost immediately, her vibrant red hair a beacon near a table piled high with antique receivers. She saw him and her face lit up, a genuine, welcoming smile spreading across her lips. "Kai, you made it," she exclaimed, walking over, her eyes sparkling. "I wasn't sure you would. Welcome to the San Juan Island Amateur Radio Club." She gestured around the room. "This is where the magic happens, or at least where we try to make it happen." Kai felt a faint blush creep up his neck, but her warmth was disarming. "Thanks for the invite, Maya. It's a lot." "It is," she agreed, a knowing glint in her eyes. "But it's a good kind of lot. Come on, I'll introduce you to some of the regulars." She led him around the room, introducing him to a collection of eccentric and passionate individuals. There was old Mr. Henderson, a retired Navy radio operator who spoke in clipped, technical terms and had a vast collection of vacuum tubes. There was Sarah, a quiet high school student who was surprisingly adept at coding microcontrollers for custom radio projects. And there was Ben, a gruff but kind mechanic who specialized in restoring antique radios. They all shared a common language, the language of frequencies, signals, and the endless possibilities of radio waves. Kai found himself drawn to Ben, who was meticulously cleaning the dusty interior of a vintage shortwave radio. "So, you're the new builder Maya was talking about?" Ben asked, his voice raspy but friendly. "Heard you're struggling with a hum in your transmitter?" Kai nodded, grateful for the directness. He pulled out his small notebook, filled with his circuit diagrams and frustrated notes. "Yeah, it's a low-frequency hum. I've tried everything, but it just won't clear up." Ben peered at his diagram, his brow furrowed in concentration. He pointed to a section with a grease-stained finger. "See this capacitor here? You've got it wired in series with the power supply. For a hum like that, you want it in parallel, acting as a filter. It'll smooth out the ripple from your power source." It was a simple adjustment, a fundamental principle Kai had overlooked in his self-taught haste. The realization hit him with a jolt of clarity. He had been so focused on the complex, on the cutting edge, that he had missed a basic, foundational element. It was a humbling moment, but also incredibly liberating. The solution was so obvious, so elegant. "Of course," Kai muttered, feeling a surge of excitement. "Why didn't I think of that?" Ben chuckled. "We all miss the obvious sometimes, especially when we're too close to the problem. That's why we have this club. Different eyes, different perspectives." For the rest of the evening, Kai found himself deeply engaged. He discussed his projects, asked questions, and listened intently as others shared their own challenges and triumphs. He learned about antenna theory, signal propagation, and the art of fine-tuning a receiver. It wasn't just about fixing his hum. It was about expanding his understanding, connecting with a broader world of knowledge and shared passion. The conversations flowed effortlessly, and Kai found himself more animated than he had been in a long time. For the first time, he felt that old fire return, the same fire he had felt when he first conceptualized Chronobloom, when everything was new and exciting, but this time, it was different. It was a fire fueled by collaboration, not just individual ambition. Later in the evening, as the club began to wind down, Kai found himself chatting with Maya. "You were right," he said, a genuine smile on his face. "They're a friendly bunch. And Ben, he helped me figure out that hum. It was a simple fix, but I never would have seen it on my own." Maya smiled, her eyes twinkling. "I knew you'd fit right in. You've been carrying this weight around for so long, Kai. Maybe it's time to let some of it go. You're finding a new way to create, a new way to connect, and a new way to learn." The words hit him harder than he expected. It was true. He had been so focused on building a future, on proving himself, that he had forgotten to live in the moment, to seek out collaboration, to embrace the joy of shared discovery. He had been so consumed with the idea of fixing what was broken within himself that he had ignored the simple joy of creating something new, something entirely his own, with the help of others. As he drove back to the cabin, the island roads felt different. The mist had cleared, and the moonlight illuminated the path ahead. The silence of the cabin, once oppressive, now felt peaceful, filled with the hum of new ideas and the echoes of friendly voices. He immediately went to his workbench, made the simple adjustment to the capacitor, and powered on his transmitter. This time, the audio signal was clear, crisp, and free of the persistent hum. A wave of profound satisfaction washed over him. It was in this moment, under the quiet glow of his workbench lamp, that Kai realized something significant. His life, though scarred, was not over. It was just beginning. The path wasn't clear, but for the first time, he felt a genuine sense of direction, guided not by ambition alone, but by a deeper, more authentic connection to himself and the world around him. The static in his life was finally clearing, making way for a new, clearer signal. The months that followed Kai's integration into the San Juan Island Amateur Radio Club felt like a new chapter in his life, a profound shift in how he approached both his craft and his personal relationships. The intensity that had once consumed him, the relentless pursuit of perfection in the digital world, had mellowed. It was replaced by a steady sense of purpose and balance, a quiet confidence rooted in authenticity. He had learned to set clear boundaries, not just with his time, but with his emotional energy, committing to living with intention, something he had never truly done before. His small workshop in the cabin, once a solitary refuge, now buzzed with a different kind of energy. He was no longer just building for himself. Inspired by the club, he started taking on small projects for island residents, repairing old radios, setting up emergency communication systems for remote cabins, and even helping a local marine biologist rig a custom telemetry device for tracking orcas. His reputation as the guy who can fix anything electronic grew, and with it, a quiet sense of pride that felt far more fulfilling than any game launch. He wasn't just fixing circuits, he was fixing connections, building bridges within his new community. That Friday evening, as Kai meticulously organized his workbench after a productive day of soldering and troubleshooting, he felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction. His tools were clean, his components neatly arranged, and he had carved out time to meet with Maya for dinner, something that had become a cherished ritual. It was a far cry from the days when coding marathons had kept him tethered to his desk long after the sun had set. He stood up, stretched, and smiled to himself. He felt different. He was different. And for the first time in years, Kai felt like he was truly living his life, not just surviving it. Maya had been a steady source of support through this transition. She understood his passion for building, the deep satisfaction he found in bringing old tech back to life, but she also knew the importance of finding peace in the process. She had become Kai's anchor, someone who didn't just stand by him, but someone who actively helped him grow and challenged him when he needed it. Their connection had deepened into a quiet, profound love, built on shared moments of exploration, laughter, and vulnerability. They spent weekends hiking the island trails, Maya capturing the rugged beauty with her camera, while Kai experimented with portable antennas, trying to pick up distant signals from across the sound. Kai had learned to be more present with her. Their conversations were no longer overshadowed by the ghosts of his past or the anxieties of his future. He listened, truly listened, to her stories about her photography assignments, her dreams of publishing a book of island landscapes. He shared his own discoveries from the radio club, the satisfaction of a clear transmission, the camaraderie of fellow enthusiasts. They still had their individual goals, but they were also learning how to grow together, weaving their lives into a rich tapestry. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when Kai still found himself slipping back into old habits, losing track of time as he worked late into the night on a particularly stubborn circuit. But he had come a long way. That particular evening, Maya was waiting for him at their favorite local spot, a cozy seafood shack overlooking the harbor. Kai hadn't seen her in a few days, as he had been caught up in a complex repair for an old fishing boat's navigation system. But he made a promise to himself that tonight would be about them, not work. He walked into the shack, and there she was, sitting at their usual table by the window, the glow of the sunset painting the water in hues of gold and pink. Maya looked up and smiled, the warmth in her expression making Kai's heart beat a little faster. He walked over to her, leaning down to kiss her on the cheek before sitting across from her. "Hey you," Kai said, smiling back at her. "I missed you." Maya's eyes softened. "I missed you too. How's the fishing boat project coming along?" Kai leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "Finished it today. It was a beast, but I'm getting better at managing the workload, learning to take it slow and not let it consume me." "That's good to hear," Maya said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "You've been so focused lately, but it's nice to see you more balanced. You're here, with me, right now. I appreciate that." Kai felt a rush of gratitude in that moment. He had struggled so much with finding balance before, with feeling like he had to prove something to the world, to Liam, to himself. But now, with Maya by his side, he realized that it was okay to slow down, to not always be chasing the next big thing. What he had, right here, was enough. They ordered their food, and the evening passed with easy conversation, laughter, and quiet moments. For Kai, it was a profound reminder that life wasn't just about what you accomplished. It was about who you shared it with. And tonight, with Maya, he was reminded of that truth in a way he hadn't been in years. The betrayal had stripped him bare, but it had also cleared the way for something more authentic, more fulfilling. The next few months brought even more growth for Kai, both personally and professionally. His electronics repair and custom-build business continued to thrive, but now he felt more in control of it. He was taking on more challenging projects, speaking at regional electronics fairs, and gaining recognition beyond the islands. He had even started mentoring a few young enthusiasts from the radio club, passing on the lessons he had learned the hard way, not just about circuits, but about resilience and finding one's true path. But it wasn't just about work anymore. Kai had made an effort to reconnect with his family and old friends from Seattle, some of whom he had distanced himself from during his intense focus on Pixel Bloom. He realized how much he had missed their company, their laughter, and their grounding presence. They had been there for him before the success, before the betrayals, and before everything that had come crashing down. Now, they were part of the new chapter of his life where he was learning to be more present, more open, and more vulnerable. One afternoon, after a successful workshop at the radio club, Kai received a text from his old university friend, Sam, asking if he wanted to meet up for a coffee in Seattle. Sam had been a constant throughout Kai's life, someone who had been through thick and thin with him. Though they had drifted apart after college, their bond had never truly faded. Kai smiled at the message, eager to reconnect. It was another step forward, another piece of his life falling into place. They met at a quiet coffee shop near the university. Sam was already there, sitting at a corner table, a latte in hand, his usual thoughtful expression on his face. "There he is," Sam said, standing up to give Kai a warm handshake. "The island tech wizard. You look different, man. More at peace somehow." Kai laughed, feeling the weight of Sam's words settle in. "Yeah, I guess I am. Took me a while to figure it out, but I'm getting there." Sam gestured for him to sit down. "So, tell me everything. I heard you've been doing some amazing things with electronics. And I see you're spending time with Maya more, huh?" Kai nodded. "Yeah, things have changed. I'm learning how to juggle it all. Not just work, but life. Maya's been incredible through all of this. I've realized I need more than just professional success. I need balance. And I've started rebuilding that." Sam raised his cup. "To balance. I always thought you'd be too driven to slow down, but I'm proud of you, man. You're finally getting it right." They spent the next few hours reminiscing about university days, catching up on life, and talking about their respective careers. It felt good to reconnect, to know that even in the midst of everything Kai had been through, he still had these roots, these friendships, that kept him grounded. As the evening wound down, Kai found himself walking back to the ferry terminal, his heart light. It wasn't about the success or the recognition. It was about the people he loved, the relationships that sustained him through everything. And Maya, who had been by his side from the beginning of this journey, was at the center of it all. That night, as they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the stars emerge over the sound, Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. "You've come so far, Kai. I'm proud of you." Kai smiled, his arm wrapping around her. I couldn't have done it without you. You've helped me see what really matters, and for that, I'm grateful. They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of the world no longer pressing on Kai's chest. He was exactly where he needed to be. And for the first time in a long time, he realized that the future wasn't something to chase, it was something to live, right here, right now, with the people who truly mattered. The signal of his life, once jammed and distorted, was now clear, strong, and transmitting a message of hope and renewed purpose.